What's going on, everybody? It's Gino coming at you for UFC Fight Night, Vera versus Sandhagen. Before I get started, if you have not done this, subscribe to my channel. We're growing every week. It's about five subscribers a week. Started this thing off very small at 1 subscriber, and we are working our way up, and I appreciate everybody for the continued follows. The one thing I'm going to say is I have a lot of people that have not subscribed that continue to watch this video, so help me out. Hit the subscribe. Also, like the video, leave me a comment of your favorite fight of the night for DraftKings, and tell me why. I want to hear, want to know. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get started, and we're going to start with the main event. All right, first we have Marlon Vera versus Cory Sandhagen. So here's what I got with Marlon Vera. All right, so I think he gets better, and people have said this. He gets better as the 5 rounds go on. He's never been finished in the UFC, which is something to note because he's got a very extensive experience in the UFC for a guy that's never been finished. He has 11 finishes himself in the UFC. He has a 68% takedown defense, high volume striking, not much on the takedown department, more of a finisher if he's going to score well and strike his way over 5 rounds. Getting a late finish with some volume, I could see him scoring very well at 7,600. On the other side, Sandhagen is the favorite at minus 600. He has lost to Jan and Dillashaw. They're good losses, but they're still losses. He hit Frankie Edgar with the flying knee, but I don't really like Edgar that much, so maybe it's just bias on me, but it doesn't show me that much. So I'm going to go with the value here and play Vera, but I'm going to be heavy on both, possibly all in, but I'm going to probably let the DS decide for me how much of each. I'll probably put it at their projected ownership and then let the DS decide the rest. I'm extremely high on the next fight, and women's MMA goes underlooked, and pretty much every week you have a women's fight that lands in the optimal, and usually it's at like 12 to 10% ownership, and I could see this possibly being one. Holly Holm, Yana Santos. The thing about Holly Holm is she's always good for a finish. She's been finished 3 times in her career herself, which makes Santos interesting because she can get finishes. She does have a round 1 TKO loss, yet Santos does, versus Aldana. She also lost to Ladd round 3 TKO. So I'm very confident in Holmes' ability because those are not formidable opponents. But I'm going to be high on both because if Santos can pull off the win, the upset, then and it's women's MMA, then she could really likely land in the optimal lineup. Next, we have Nate Landwehr versus Austin Lingo. This is a fight where I am going to go just with Landwehr. I do not fight $6,000 fighters. Now, I made exceptions last week, and it really almost got us into the nuts. But when there's a larger sample on these pay-per-views, I really think it's worth it to play 6K fighters. I do need to run some data through back testing to confirm that, but that is my superficial analysis of the matter. All right, next, so if we look at Landwehr, he scored 104, 93, and 83.7. So I like him a lot. I think he could really dominate this fight. So I'm going to play him, and I'm going to see if possibly his price suppresses some ownership here. Okay, this one is going to be dog or pass. Macy Barber just does not have many pass to paying off that 9,100. She has slight control time, slight takedown upside, but she's $9,100. She has not scored over 105 DraftKings points since 2019. All right, and Lee, I mean, she could win. It's dog, and I'm going to bet dog or pass. So Lee's going to be a play of mine, and it'll come out on the betting video. But I will always find one of those women's dogs to see who I can get because it's like every week we got one. Shout out to Pat Mayo for putting me on that idea. All right, Alex Perez versus Manel Kape. So it's going to be Perez or pass. Manel Kape does not score very well. He scored 71, 131, and 107 in his last 3 wins. But what he's going to need to do is get that round 1 finish. I don't see Perez getting finished in round 1 by Kape. I don't think Kape is that Pantoja, Figgy level of fighter. But Perez has several submission finishes over his career, and he's fighting a guy who who has been submitted before. So I want to see this. If you look at Perez, he scored 121, 101, and 96. So I'm going to go Perez, and it's going to be Perez or pass. It could hurt me because that 8,900 tends to be owned pretty well. But I'm okay with it because I really see a lot of worlds where Manel Kopp does not score well. All right, Njokuani versus Albert Duraev. Albert Duraev is 5-1 over his last 6. He was finished in round 2 by Buckley, and remember, a lot of those 5 were against lower-level opponents. He's fighting an Njokuani who has low volume overall. He's a finisher in all of his UFC wins within the first 2 rounds. So I really like him. He's a good candidate for the early win bonus. In his first 2 wins, he scored 108 and 129 on DraftKings in his last 2 wins. The under 1.5 is set at minus 120, which tells us the violence here could be very nice. So this is a fight. I'm going to be at least field ownership on the guys, and I'm going to check, see projections. I got to get all that in front of me, and this could be one where I go heavy on and try to leverage that to the main event, which I think is going to garner quite a bit of ownership. Daniel Pineda versus Tucker Lutz. I'm going to get elevated ownership on both, and here's why. Pineda, he's worked on the grappling. He's worked on it a lot. He's a good grappler. He can get control time, takedowns, dominate the fight that way. But he did get knocked out in round 2 by Cub Swanson. Cub Swanson's okay, but I mean that makes me a little nervous. Pineda has 11 confirmed submissions. He has scored 137, 103, and 106 in his last 3 wins. So very high chance of him at $7,000 ending up optimal. So I'm definitely gonna be on that. Now we have Tucker Lutz at 9,200. It's his 4th fight in the UFC. He went to decision against Sabatini. He does have good volume. He's yet to land a finish in the UFC, but he could. If you look at his history, he could land a finish. So with that being said, I'm gonna be high on both, but Lutz is the pick. Steven Peterson versus Lucas Alexander. So I'm going another dog here at plus 140. He's 7,500. He has a submission loss in his debut, but he's 5-1. He's shown KO ability in his earlier fights. He has submission defense, which is in question right now as it relates to being in the UFC. But he's a live dog. He could come out guns blazing, get himself a finish. A lot of times those guys after they get the jitters out in the first one, they can come out swinging because now they know what to do. Just Steven Peterson, who's 2-3 over the last 5. Anytime a guy's 2-3 and he's almost minus 200, I tend to drift towards the plus money side. He did beat Hooper. Peterson did beat Hooper by decision, which, I think that's a pretty decent win. I can't say it's not, but I think Lucas Alexander is I think he could beat Hooper. If you look at Peterson, he scored 79, 195, and he's 8,700. So that's what I'm saying. I'm going to be at least at the field. The under 2.5 is plus 110, so that tells us there's a high probability of this going to decision, which is why I'm saying field. Giles versus Preston Parson. I'm going to go Parson, and it's going to be Parson or pass, because if you look at Giles, he does not score well. He's 3-3 over his last 6. He's finished by Morales and Duplessis, which are good opponents, but they finished him, got him out of there. He's becoming more of a decision fighter as he steps it up, but he does have finishes, but he's also been finished several times. And the under 2.5 is minus 175. If you look at Parson, he's 5-1 over his last 6, and he has several round 1 finishes. So the math, to me, on what I'm looking, the Geno math, is really looking up for me for the dog. So it's going to be dog or pass, and I'm going with Parson. Daniel De Silva versus CJ Vergara. Daniel De Silva is very quickly going to be out of the UFC. That's what I'm calling. Vergara lacks volume. He has a history of finishes and could get the round 1 at 9,300, and so he could be a great leverage play. Wait for that, but it's going to be Vergara or pass. Trey Ogden versus Manuel Torres. It's going to be elevated ownership on both guys. The under is set at 1.5, but it's plus 105, but that's okay. That's not to say that right after round 2 or right towards the end of round 2, somebody doesn't get a finish. Torres had 114 DraftKings points against Camacho, so he volumed, or I think that was a round 1, actually. He has 2 round 1 losses, and he has 4 round 1 finishes in a row against lower-level UFC opponents. In 2 of them. If you looked at Ogden, he has a split decision versus Levitt, which has aged well. I think Levitt looked really good in his last fight, and I still think he could have beat Patty if he makes a couple different decisions and doesn't get himself choked out. Next, we have Victor Altamirano versus Vinicius Salvador. Had to get that bottom screen out. It's not time to go yet. Okay, we have Vinicius Salvador versus Victor Altamirano. I'm going for Salvador, but I'm going to be over the field on both. Both guys are explosive. Both guys can get finishes. They're both stepping like they're working their way up the ladder, and so. If you look at Salvador, he does have 4 TKO finishes in a row, which makes me really like him as a favorite at minus 115. But this is a toss-up, which makes me say at under 1.5 plus 145. I'm going to be heavy on both guys. All right, guys. Hey, that's it for the full card breakdown. Do me a favor. If this information's good for you, if you look at my beginning page, I just hit a NASCAR. I literally just went on the cheat sheet, looked at the cheat sheet, plugged in the numbers, used leverage, took down a tournament, won about $1,000 last weekend on $5 of bets on NASCAR. So come join us. Use promo code DFLGino for an entirety of 10% off for the entirety of time you are registered in the DFS Army. My link is in the description. And hit me up, guys. I'm also on Twitter at TheRealGC9. I appreciate all you guys, and good luck this weekend.